Hi, in this video I have the Transcend DrivePro 250. I will demonstrate the unit and I'll also take it on the road and show you some of the footage. This is the latest model. It is the 2K 1440p. Some of the DrivePro 250 models are still the 1080p. Right, in the box we have the unit. They provide you with this 32 gigs, they call it a high endurance SD card. Then there's the leaflets, etc. The dash cam can handle a SD card up to 256 gigs as long as it is the later model of 2023. Here is the power supply. This can be plugged into your cigarette lighter with a 12 volt or a 24 volt supply. The output is 5 volts at a maximum of 2 amps. The length of this cable is about 4 meters. Just a note that this is a micro USB, while most of the modern dash cams are using the USB-C. Now, if you have an older DrivePro, it uses the mini USB, and obviously these are incompatible. So if you're upgrading from an older DrivePro, you will need to change the power cable. Right, the dashcam comes with the suction mount, and what happens is it slides on. So I seat it in there and then I just slide it. If I want to release the dashcam, I depress this and then I slide it away, and there I can remove it. If you are upgrading from an older DrivePro, you'll notice that it has the same fittings, so you can also use your same windscreen attachments. Once on the windscreen, I just need to depress this down and then it sucks in. I have a knob here which allows me to turn it this way, and I can also rotate it. I tighten it there and I tighten it here to make sure that it is stable. Right, the mass of the unit is very low. It's below 90 grams, including the SD card. All right, so this is the unit, just to give you an idea of the dimensions. It is just less than 7 centimeters and the width is just over 6 centimeters. Having a look at the profile there, just less than 4 centimeters. What is nice is it has this screen at the back, which is quite big, measuring at 6 centimeters diagonally. Now, the memory card must be formatted using FAT32. It will not work with exFAT, so make sure you format it, and then always a good plan is to go and check if there's a firmware upgrade. I will also demonstrate how to upgrade the firmware. So I insert the memory card and now I can turn on the unit. And there is an LED telling me the power is on. I select the language. Now I'm just going to select the date. These are all correct. I just need to change the time zone. Right, so it's asking me if I want 24-hour clock or if I want a normal AM, PM. Then it's asking me the format, day, month, year, day, year, month, day, and then just the time zone. Right, just having a look at the settings, there is a flashing LED here. If the LED is flashing, it means it is on and recording. If the LED is solid red, then it is in the standby mode. If it is flashing blue, for example, I'm going to switch the Wi-Fi on. Notice that the LED is now flashing blue, telling me the Wi-Fi is enabled. I'll also see the Wi-Fi symbol over there on the screen. Quickly going through the menu, if I press this button over here, I get through the playback option, so I can choose the type of recording. You will notice that when you take the SD card out, you will have different folders. There's the normal recording, the emergency recording, and the snapshots. If you'd like to take a snapshot while driving, you can just press this button over here at any time. If I press this button, it is now taking a snapshot of whatever is in front of the camera. So if I come back to this, I can interrogate which of the folders I would like to see. So if I say normal, these are the files that have already been recorded, and then I can say okay, and then it will whatever was recorded, you can lock it, which means that it will block that file from being recorded over, or you can dump it there with this button over here. You can pause the playback and then you can play it. So the nice thing about the screen is that it allows you to review footage directly at the dash cam, but you can also connect via Wi-Fi, which I'll show shortly. You might be seeing some grain on the screen. That is just because of my camera introducing that noise. Actually, the screen is quite clear. It doesn't have that grain. Now, something you might notice is these buttons are a little bit finicky. Like, I might have to press them more than once for the unit to actually respond. That can be quite annoying. Right, I would like to get into the settings now. I press this button over here for settings. Right, so the camera settings set the resolution. So if I show you the resolution, we can select the highest resolution is 2560 by 1440, and that can be at 60 frames per second or 30 frames per second. The bit rate at the 60 frames per second is about 14.4 megabits per second, while the 30 frames per second records at about 22 megabits per second. So you're actually getting a better bit rate with the lower frame rate. And then 1080p, we can also select 60 frames per second or the 30 frames per second, and the same with 720p. Now, just a note, if you are going to be using the unit at the 60 frames per second, the driver assistance, which I'll show now, will be disabled. So in order to use the driver assistance, you will have to have it at the 2560 by 1440 at 30 frames per second. Now, just having a look at the exposure value, this allows you to increase the brightness of the recording, so you can increase it up to 2 stops or you can decrease it. My experience with this particular unit is I have it at 1 stop higher. And then it's got the microphone, so I like to record what's happening in the cabin, so you can enable it. The microphone is over there, and I have got a sound test in the video. Overall, my review of the microphone is it's good. It doesn't have like a tinny sound. It's got a fairly bassy sound, so it doesn't sound like chipmunks. Notice that sometimes I have to press the button twice. Now it says video length. This is how long each file will be. So if you want shorter files that are easier to transfer using Wi-Fi, then you could choose the 1 minute, or you could choose 3 minutes, or up to 5 minutes. I just keep it on the 3 minutes. The file size ranges from about 350 to 450 megs. Now the video stamp, that's if you want the time and date and then the GPS, etc. on the recording. Then the loop recording ideally should be left on. That means if the SD card is full, it will just loop around and start recording the oldest, so it'll record over the oldest videos. The light frequency, this has to do with the mains frequency of your location. If you live in a country where the electricity supply is 50 hertz, then you'll select 50. If your mains frequency is 60, then you'll select 60. Personally, I've tried this on the 50 hertz and I still get quite a lot of flicker. I don't find this works very well. In the driving videos, you will notice the traffic lights do flicker a bit, so there is a little bit of a problem there. Time-lapse video, this is if you don't want it to record continuously, but you'd rather just let it record an image per second, or an image per 2 seconds or 4 seconds. That'll obviously provide you with a lot of images. Instead of utilizing your SD card very quickly, it will then record per second instead of the 30 frames per second or the 60 frames per second. Alright, then we have the driving assistance. It has a lane departure warning. You can set this on or off. Remember that the lane departure and the forward collision only work if the unit is set to the 30 frames per second. Now, I've tested the lane departure warning. It works quite well. It makes a little did sound, and then it's got forward collision, which I was unable to test. The speed alarm, you can set that. If you would like to set a maximum speed, you can then just set it according to these parameters. Then we've got the speed unit. That's if you want it in miles per hour or kilometers per hour. Then the head-up display, what it does is if I have it enabled, it will show your speed based on the GPS that's built in here. As you accelerate, it will show your current speed, and that will be shown on this display. Then it's got a headlight reminder, and then it's got driver fatigue. You can set the intervals to warn you to have your brake. Now, the parking mode can be enabled or disabled, and what this is once the car is turned off, for example, the power is disconnected. So if your car is turned off, your cigarette lighter would go off, and then this would actually go off. Notice it has a turn off delay, which you can actually set that timer. Now it goes off. Now, if you want to, you can use a hardwired kit. For example, Transcend make this hardwire power cable, and its input is 12 to 24 volts, and it gives you an output of 5 volts. Why one would use this is you can connect this directly to one of your circuits in your vehicle. So that is why it looks like this. This would be connected to the chassis, and over here this would be connected to a 12 volt source and one that remains on. And then what we have here is an inline fuse, and then here is the converter. It will step down the 12 volts or 24 volts from your battery, and it will drop it to the 5 volts for the DrivePro. By having this hardwired connector, the DrivePro then can continuously work when your car is off. Now, how the parking mode works is if I enable it, notice this LED here is still on. And what happens is if there is motion detected in front of the lens, notice that it just starts recording. So that's very useful. The car didn't need to be bumped, just the motion activates the unit and it records for about 15 seconds. Now the unit has got an internal battery, so if there's motion again, like there we can see, it will start recording. But obviously if I keep on doing this and I don't charge the battery, this will then deplete the internal battery. So that is why I said if you have the hardwired unit, then this will continuously do this, but it can deplete your car battery as well, although this does not use much energy. So just be aware of that. If you want this to work at its maximum, then you'll need to do the hardwired connection, but the unit does have a built-in battery. Now, as soon as the unit is plugged in, it automatically starts recording. If I go back to the settings now, right, I'm going to go into the system settings now, and I'm going to go all the way to the bottom, and it says information. I'm checking the firmware version, and this is version 3. Now, I've checked on the website, and version 3.1 is available. So I'm going to quickly demonstrate how to upgrade the firmware. So you have to be in the systems settings, and then I scroll down until I see upgrade firmware. I say confirm and I say okay. Now it will upgrade the firmware, and I'll tell you how I did that. On the website you will see a folder, and there's a zip folder. I download the zip folder and then I unzip it, and inside there's a firmware file. I need to copy that firmware file into the system folder of the SD card. I copied the firmware file into the system folder, and now the DrivePro located that file, and it is now upgrading the firmware, and hopefully the functionality will improve a bit. We are now on firmware 3.1, so it has upgraded successfully. And we've got the volume. That's the volume of the unit when you do the lane departure, or when it switches on or detects something. There, I'm going to set it to 6. Then we've got the G sensor. Now this unit has a sensor inside to determine if there's motion, if it gets knocked and things like that. So that also determines when it records the emergency recording. The unit has 3 folders on the SD card. One is N recording, standing for normal recording. Then there is emergency recording, and the emergency recording is based on this, how sensitive the G sensor was. So if there was a bump or a collision, then it will require quite a lot of motion in order to get the unit to record if it's on low. So you can select this on low, medium or high. But just a reminder, there is an emergency recording dedicated button on the side here. If you ever just want to quickly record something, just press that and it will automatically go and record that and place it in the emergency recording folder. So I'm leaving this on the low sensitivity, and then it asks you for the delay power off. For me, 10 seconds is sufficient. You can set that. We've got the auto display off. Now that means that this will stay on all the time. So while you're driving, it will show the image. I like it to go off. So after 1 minute after I've been in the vehicle, the display goes off. And then we've got the GPS status. I'm currently inside, but it has quite a few GPS satellites synced. I've noticed that the unit is quite stable with the speed, and here it even gives the elevation. So you can always check that by going into the GPS. Now, just a note, that location indicator or symbol there is telling me that the GPS is functional. Now I'm going to go back into the settings. All right, then we have the Wi-Fi. I'm going to turn it on, and I'm going to quickly demonstrate how it works. Now, all we need to do is download the app from the Play Store or the App Store. In order for me to use the Wi-Fi, I have to press this button, and then it says Wi-Fi on, and notice that blue LED flashes. Then I need to go and get the app. Right, in the App Store, I search for this app. It's called DrivePro. I've already installed it. Right, so you'll just need to select your device, and I've selected the DrivePro 250, and then you'll need to put in the default password and then locate it. So I'll do that, and there I see the DrivePro wireless signal, and now I'm connected. So I can now go and say live view, and there you can see the live view. It's much clearer on my screen. There is a bit of flicker here, but that doesn't happen. It's only because of the camera. Now, more importantly, you might want to download some of the recordings, and then I can download them. So here's a file, and I can immediately start playing. It's streaming quite quickly, and there I can interrogate the 3 folders as mentioned: the snapshot, the emergency, and the normal recording. So in order for me to download the file, I have to do that, and then I say okay, and there you can get an idea of the transfer rate. Now remember that I chose the 3-minute recordings, so it's about, as I said, 450 megs. Here it's saying 500, but notice that it is going to take a bit of time. Right, the other settings are just the time and date, the language, and these are the languages available. Alright, so this is recording at 1440 at 30 frames per second. This is 1440 at 60 frames per second. This is 1440 at 60 frames per second.
Continue straight for 7 minutes to exit F31 towards Joe Slomo Drive.
Hello?
Hello, please can I have a twister? Alright, so audio test, this is the 1440 at 30 frames per second. This is 1080p at 60 frames per second. Yeah, that's a design. Somebody chose that design. But I don't think so. That guy made that. So anyway,
Yeah.
he said no, at the building store you can buy the etching. I'll be very disappointed because mine's supposed to be clearer than yours.
Another year. And there was that one that always used to sit, remember, you always used to sit by that cachet.
Yes. That's what I was actually thinking. I wonder what happened to that whole group.
They kicked them off there.
Yeah, but I wonder what happened.
I see them.
Right, so what do I think of the DrivePro? Well, I like the fact that I can switch off the Wi-Fi. It's not necessary to be on all the time. The next thing is getting the SD card in and out is not such a problem. I have a Hikvision dashcam which is very difficult to get the SD card out, while this one is easy. The unit is light and it's pretty rugged. The footage is okay. It's not spectacular. It's not terrible, but the 60 frames per second footage I feel is just a marketing ploy. I will not be using the 60 frames per second because I noticed that the bit rate is lower and therefore there's so much grain, there's so much noise. Would I recommend this? I'm not sure. It's got quite a good bit rate for the 30 frames per second. Would I recommend it? Well, that's a bit tricky because I've owned quite a few of these Transcends and I can say that they are reliable. Just make sure that the card is formatted correctly, otherwise you will run into a problem. But in terms of the video quality, it's okay. That's all I can say. The audio quality is great. The GPS works well. It's easy to install. You can also get another type of mount. It's easy to remove and put in. So if you are in a dodgy area, you can just remove your dash cam. So overall, it's okay. Thanks for watching and cheers.